Some time ago, one of my viewers asked me if I could make a video talking about the video game systems that I grew up with, and I've been more than happy to do that. This is part 3 of that series, just because there was so much to cover. You could find the other videos down in the description. They'll also pop up in the screen at some point, and they'll also be available at the end of this video. And in the first 2 videos, we covered Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Philips CDI, PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and Sega Dreamcast. And so now we're going to continue that journey of the video game systems that I grew up with up until modern day, which is today, coincidentally. And that's going to continue on. So last was Sega Dreamcast. Now it's going to be PlayStation 2. Ooh. PlayStation 2 was released on October 26th in the year 2000. 21 years ago. Damn! When you read things like that, that's when I get a huge perception that, wow, I'm getting old. 21 years ago. Right. I would have been 17 years old. That's not good. Anyways, when PlayStation 2 was released in the year 2000, it cost a whopping $299, and in today's money would be $449.39. Now that is obviously a little bit more not bad at maths. That is less expensive than a modern PlayStation 5 by about $50 if you are getting the disc version. And if you are getting the digital edition, which I believe is $399, yes, $399, it's $50 more, or the PlayStation 2 was in today's money. If somebody came to me and said, "Hey man, I got a pristine PlayStation 2, never opened, do you want to buy it from me for $450 big ones?" I would have to say no. Much like the PlayStation 1, I loved the systems at the time, but there's just nothing gripping about PlayStation 2 that would make me want to have it again. If they said $100, $150, $200 at the most, sure, why not? But there again, there was nothing amazing or what's the feeling? Nostalgic about PlayStation 2. I love the system, and also a lot of the things that you could play on PlayStation 2 have been remade for PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 or even PlayStation 5 now. So there's really no like gotta have it feeling about it. PlayStation 2 also was the last PlayStation that you could actually play the PlayStation 1 games on. Most of them, not all of them, but after that Sony was just like, never mind that shit. Just like with the videos prior to this, I have my trusty computer here because I got notes, and I need notes because I had to write this stuff down because it's 21 years ago. And so I just couldn't remember some of these things. So I'm going to run through some of my favorite games that I could recall from PlayStation 2. Fatal Frame was one of them, which is kind of sad that nothing more happened with that series. At least I don't think it has. Maybe it has, but there was Fatal Frame, the original one, and then they made like a 2 and a 3, but I only played the original. It was a survival horror game that dealt with taking pictures, and you needed to take pictures to see where the monsters were. It was like super creepy. If you like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, it had that kind of vibe to it. More of a Silent Hill vibe. It wasn't a shoot 'em up kind of game or where you're constantly battling things. It was more of puzzle solving and figuring things out. It was a lot of fun. Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec. always played Gran Turismo. Obviously, I haven't played all of them, but when I get a PlayStation, gotta have Gran Turismo because I just love racing games. Grand Theft Auto 3, that's when Grand Theft Auto finally became like an open world game where you could punch people in the face on the street and have sex with prostitutes, that sort of thing. And then after that came... Now, you know what? Talking about Grand Theft Auto, I had this idea of Grand Theft Auto, like the old ones, like Grand Theft Auto 3, and the next one we're getting to, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. In my mind, these games were both the same thing. They were both the same game. And they weren't. That's how memory works. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Because when I was looking at these things, I'm like...
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Shut up! So Grand Theft Auto 3 took place in Liberty City, and Grand Theft Auto Vice City took place in like 1980s Miami, the Miami Vice sort of vibe. So I was surprised to see that again because in my mind, I had my own little story going on, which was not accurate. But both of those Grand Theft Autos were amazing, obviously. Now, they don't, you know, the gameplay wasn't what it is now. It didn't look the same, but at the time, loved it. It was just, I mean, I would still play the shit out of those two games, especially Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I remember, you know, when you get into a car, you could flip through the radio stations and they would play like 80s music. I remember some of the songs were, I don't know the name of the artist. It might be like Aniko or something, but Japanese Boy. I think Rush Rush or just Rush by Blondie was another one of the songs on there. Yeah, that's the only really ones that I remember. But they had a lot of 80s songs in there, and I love 80s music, obviously. That's kind of like what I grew up with. But there was also a radio talk show that you could listen to while you're driving in around a car, and it was the funniest thing. I would just get in a car and listen to the talk show because it was that good. The guy that hosted it was called Maurice Chavez. And like the whole, I mean, obviously it replayed the same program over and over in different parts when you got into the car. But maybe I'm going to see if I can find that radio program somewhere on YouTube. And I'll put it down in the description if I'm able to find it because it was just hilarious. He had multiple guests on there. They all had some kind of like mental or emotional problems. Good stuffs. NFL Blitz 2002 and 2003. We already talked about NFL Blitz when we talked about the Nintendo 64 and maybe even the PlayStation. But we also had it for PlayStation 2 and NFL Blitz. I wish they would remake those games. They were like, obviously, football games. The whole NFL part probably gave it away. But it wasn't like Madden or NFL Live or anything like that. It's just kind of like more of like an NBA Jam for the NFL or NBA Hang Time for NFL. It wasn't like a full squad. You could do all sorts of wild things in there. I wish they would bring those back. Resident Evil 4. That's not accurate. I don't think I played Resident Evil 4 on PlayStation 2. That's going to be on PlayStation 3. Silent Hill 2 and 3, I played. There were several others that came out for PS2. Never played those. Star Wars Battlefront was also another one of my favorites. And Unreal Tournament, which was a shoot-'em-up style game, which was a lot of fun. And that's the end of PlayStation 2. Now, I know it doesn't seem like it's a lot of games, but as it was with the Dreamcast, that was coming to a point when we just weren't all that into games anymore. At least I wasn't. I mean, my priorities in life were changing, and PlayStation 2 was the last system where I really gave it the beans. But even then, it just started to fall off because, you know, the things I was doing in life were vastly changing. Relationships, jobs, that sort of stuff. And so after that, Many years later, comes along PlayStation 3. Now, PlayStation 3 was released on November 17th, 2006, but I did not get it at that point. I didn't get a PlayStation 3, and the only reason I got it was just to have something, a little something to mess around with now and then when I had some time. And I got the PlayStation 3 in I can't even, it was, to help narrow it down, when I got a PlayStation 3, the original model, that was backwards compatible, which I know earlier I said that the PS2 was the last backwards compatible model. The very first original PS3 was backwards compatible, but they put the kibosh to that and they stopped selling that. When I had a PlayStation 3 Slim, now they had the Slim and then the Ultra Slim, I had the Slim, so the middle one. I got that in, I'd like to say probably 2011 or 2012. I know I got it before I started trucking, and I started trucking in late 2012, so it probably would have been sometime prior to that in 2012, probably not 2011. But I don't remember how much I paid for it. Maybe it was $2.99, something like that. It had already been out for many years, so it wasn't so relevant. However, when it was first released, the 20 gigabyte model was $499.99, and the 60 gigabyte model was $599.99, $100 more. Now, in today's money, the 20 gigabyte model, $499.99, would be $641.48. Ouch! That's $40 more. Well, over $40 more than the PlayStation 5 Disc Edition. And for the 60 gigabyte model, in today's money, back then costing $599.99, would be $741.48. Damn! That's crazy. But there is a good reason why that one particularly was so expensive. I'm sorry, I just need to drink something because all this talking. I usually don't talk this much. But there is a good reason why the PlayStation 3 was so expensive. Blu-ray was still like pretty new. It was very new. In fact, it was so new that at that time, Blu-ray and HD DVD were in competition to see which format would become the standard for high definition video, pretty much. And these companies went with Blu-ray, these companies went with HD DVD. Microsoft was going with HD DVD. I believe the competitor to the PS3 was the Xbox 360. I don't know. Whatever Xbox was out at that time went with HD DVD. And format wars have happened in the past several times, and this was in the midst of that format war. Now, Blu-ray technology itself was expensive, like super expensive, just as was DVD when it first came out, just as Betamax, just as VHS when they were brand new, or Laserdisc for that matter. And so that's why the PlayStation 3 was so expensive. But even despite being so expensive, Sony was losing money on every console they sold. Now, for things like this, it takes a long time to make a profit on these things. And eventually they did, but it takes a long time. Take the Toyota Prius, for example. It took Toyota 10 years to turn a profit on that car. And so obviously eventually you don't see HD DVD anymore. Everything is Blu-ray, and so Blu-ray won the format war against HD DVD. And a big part of the reason that Blu-ray won over HD DVD is because the porn industry decided to go with Blu-ray. So that pretty much called it. Porn industry, lots of monies, lots of sales, people jerking it, having wanks. If the porn industry says Blu-ray, it's going to be Blu-ray. And that's how that went down. As I stated earlier, I bought a PlayStation 3 just to have something to mess around with from time to time. So this list of video games is going to be super duper ultra short. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 and 2, I played those a ton, especially with my cousin. We'd run around the maps and try to kill each other, and he usually kicked my ass because I'm just not that good at it. Need for Speed Shift, that one was actually really, but unlike most Need for Speed games, Shift was actually one that was kind of like more realistic racing, but it was good. Dead Island is another one of my favorite games. That game I probably played the most on the PlayStation 3 just because I'm such a sucker for anything zombie. In fact, let me know your favorite zombie games down in the description other than Resident Evil, because I'm sure there's so many out there that I just haven't heard of. And I know there was a second part to Dead Island. Never got to play that. Gran Turismo 5. Loved that. Obviously, Dead Nation was kind of like a goofy sort of zombie game, but I enjoyed it. And also Infamous. Now, Infamous and Dead Nation are two games that I got for free because that's when Sony's hack happened. People hacked into Sony's servers and put people's payment information out on the internets for anybody to snatch up. And so Sony was like, hey man, we really bonked up this one, so here's some free stuff. So I think they gave people a choice of free games and kind of like, sorry, you know. And so Dead Nation or Infamous, two games that I got, and I enjoyed them both very much. Fortunately, you know, I changed my debit card or whatever card information was on there in case it was out there on the internets, and nothing bad happened, at least to me, from that. And that is the end of the list for PlayStation 3, and that is where my gaming journey or gaming history comes to an end. I never got a PlayStation 4. I never bought a system after PlayStation 3. It just came down to, not that I didn't like gaming anymore, it's just I didn't have the time for it. Driving a truck, in fact, my PlayStation 3, I still have it. I used to have it with me on the road, and I used to play it on the road whenever I had a chance. But then I started doing YouTube again. There was like a 4-year period where I didn't do anything on YouTube. And in those times, I would play the game. But as I've probably mentioned before, electronics get destroyed inside of trucks because of all the rattling and the shaking and this and that. Electronics just aren't meant, they're not designed to withstand that constantly. And so eventually my PlayStation 3, the disc drive busted. Like, you put the disc in, it does something weird and funky, and it spits the disc back out. And so, I mean, you could try it 50 times, and maybe one time out of those 50, it'll actually work. Other than that, the PlayStation 3 works perfectly fine. Obviously, it's outdated. Sony doesn't support it anymore. So it just sits there at home on a shelf collecting dust. And I figured I'm never home. Well, I am not never, but very rarely. I spend a couple weeks at home. So I never got a PlayStation 4. And in fact, I got a PlayStation 3 like maybe 4 months before the PS4 came out. And just because I was so out of the loop, I didn't even know that it was going to be coming out. And so I just never got one because I knew I wouldn't have that much opportunity to play it. But I want to change that because I miss playing games. I miss getting, you know, so wrapped up in the story of a video game. I mean, sure, you can get that through books, you can get that through a TV show or a movie, but I just like being part of it, like playing it. It's a whole different experience than reading a good book or listening to a podcast or watching a movie or a show. Like that's something that just goes on, and you can do it over and over and have a slightly different experience every single time. And so I'm on a mission to get a PlayStation 5. I want it so bad. So bad. I tried when it first came out, to no avail. And then, you know, they had like huge shipments they'd release, and I tried getting one, then couldn't get one. But I was already committed to the fact that I'm not going to get one until 2021. And even now, like, I've been on the road since my last time off during the holidays. And I'm not going to be home again until April for 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully I can get one by then. And when I'm home, I can do some gaming, play some games, do, you know, get back into it, because I really, really, really miss it. And hopefully I can start doing some live streams with video games. I'd have to figure all that stuff out, or at least post gameplay or something. I don't know, something that you guys would actually be interested in seeing. So that is that for my gaming history. There's a little bonus. I did own a Sega Game Gear, which was like a handheld gaming device. And I didn't have a whole lot of games for it. The only ones I remember were Sonic the Hedgehog and Mortal Kombat. And that, my Game Gear, I took, this was, I don't even know the year. I didn't look up the prices and none of that. I just know that it's probably somewhere in Poland right now. Because at the time I had it, well, I had already owned it for a while. But we were in Poland at the time, and a family friend was having surgery inside of a Polish hospital. And at that time, maybe it's different now, but to me, it was like one of the most traumatic experiences, because it was just such a miserable place. I mean, I still have this mental image of walking down the hall, and there was this kid with these rods sticking out of his leg, and he was on the ground, and he had a hard time getting up, and there was just nurses walking by, nobody doing anything helping this kid. And that was like, you know, that mental image has stuck in my head since then. But anyways, the family friend was having surgery. I don't even remember for what, but he was in those miserable conditions. So I left my Game Gear with him and said, here, maybe this will tide you over. And he loved it. He wanted to play it. And so it's somewhere in Poland. Maybe he still has it. I don't know. And then I also had a Sony PSP. It was really nice. It was like a Star Wars edition. But I did make the mistake of loaning it to my brother, who promptly scratched the shit out of it. So this is why I don't like loaning my stuff out, even to family or to anybody. Because they just don't give a shit about it. But I did have Star Wars Battlefront 2 for that, which was very different, obviously, from the console version. But that was a lot of fun. I had Silent Hill Origins, a lot of fun. A Transformers game, and that's all I can remember. So that is that. That completes the 3-part series of my video game history, story, whatever you want to call it. And after this, I will go, they also requested that I talk about the cell phones that I used. And I've been working so hard on this because my cell phone history dates back to the mid-90s. And I've been trying to remember the models of these phones, the phones that I owned, when, what period. So that video is also going to be coming very soon. My entire cell phone history, which consists of something like 25 phones. Anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps the channel out immensely. If you are interested in seeing part 1 and 2 of my personal video game history, you will be able to find those 2 videos linked at the end of this video right now.